Do you constantly second-guess yourself, afraid of judgment or rejection? Are you tired of watching others rise in life while you stay silent, polite, and overlooked? This video will destroy that weakness. With the teachings of Machiavelli, you'll learn to build confidence so dangerous. It commands respect without ever begging for it. Let's destroy a lie you've been fed your entire life, the lie that confidence is about being loud, visible, and always having something to say. That the confident man is the one with the biggest voice in the room, the boldest opinion, the most attention, seeking swagger. But Machiavelli would smirk at that idea, because he knew that real power, real confidence, is invisible until it strikes. It doesn't boast, it positions. True confidence is not about noise, it's about control. Not control over others, not yet, but over yourself, over your reactions, over your emotions. Over how much of yourself you reveal and how much you withhold, because in a world that runs on perception, the man who controls himself controls everything. Machiavelli wrote, "It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles." Understand what that really means. You don't need a crown, a suit, or a spotlight to be powerful. You need to behave in a way that forces the world to assign you power, even when you say nothing at all. The dangerously confident man doesn't interrupt. He doesn't need to prove he's right. He doesn't flinch when challenged. He's not in a rush to speak because he knows his silence makes others uneasy. That discomfort, that's power. That's the kind of control. Machiavelli admired the kind that turns people's assumptions against them. Because while the loud ones try to impress, the powerful ones observe. They study. They listen more than they talk. They measure people before showing their cards. And when they finally speak, it cuts through the air like a blade. Not because it's louder, but because it's measured, precise, deliberate. Machiavelli lived in a world of courts, conspiracies, and betrayal. He saw what happened to those who wore their hearts on their sleeves. They were manipulated, removed, forgotten, but those who were calm, strategic, unreadable, they were feared. And if not feared, respected. And here's where most people go wrong today. They confuse visibility with power. They think that if they're not constantly seen, they're losing. There's a secret no one tells you about influence. The world doesn't follow the smartest person in the room. It follows the most certain one. The one who speaks with conviction, even when they're uncertain inside. The one who acts like they already know the outcome, even if they're walking into chaos. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this truth better than anyone. He didn't trust intelligence alone. He trusted the appearance of control, because in a world driven by perception, looking sure is often more powerful than being right. Think about the last time you questioned yourself before making a decision. You hesitated, you overthought, you waited for approval, reassurance, someone to nod and say, "Yes, you're doing the right thing." But what happened? Someone else, maybe less prepared, maybe less talented, stepped forward without hesitation. They acted fast. They spoke like they knew what they were doing, and suddenly everyone followed them. Not because they were better, but because they moved with certainty. Machiavelli saw this in politics, in war, in court games. He saw men win power simply because they pretended they already had it. They walked, talked, and commanded like their authority was a fact, not a request. And once others believed it, it became a fact. Because people aren't wired to follow indecision. They're wired to follow stability, certainty, even if it's an illusion. Confidence, Machiavellian confidence, is not rooted in truth, it's rooted in perception. And if people perceive you as someone who always knows what to do, who never flinches, who never hesitates, then your words carry weight, even when they're wrong. That's not deception, that's strategy. That's understanding how humans operate, because most people are terrified of being wrong. They're paralyzed by the thought of failing in public, so they wait, they stall, they dilute their voice, and in doing so, they surrender power to those who are bold enough to decide, even without certainty. This is the essence of leadership, Not perfection, not flawless knowledge, but boldness. You step forward, speak clearly, act decisively, and others will align with your direction. Not because they've evaluated every option, but because they crave certainty. They crave someone who seems to have already seen the future. Someone who gives them confidence by simply appearing unshaken. And that's why the appearance of certainty is one of the most valuable tools in your arsenal. You don't have to be fearless. You don't have to have every answer. What you need is to understand this. Doubt is normal, but expressed doubt is dangerous. It leaks authority. It weakens your position. It opens the door for others to question you. Machiavelli would argue that it's not the most virtuous or most honest man who wins influence. It's the one who understands the rules of the game. And in this game, certainty, or at least the performance of it, pulls people in like gravity. So when you step into a room, when you speak to a group, when you make a decision, remember this. No one is scanning you for perfection. They're scanning you for confidence. They're looking at your posture, your eyes, your voice. They're asking, does this person believe in what they're saying? If the answer is yes, even if it's a lie, they will follow. You were raised to believe that being liked is everything, that success comes to those who are polite, agreeable, well-mannered, and always available. But let me tell you something Machiavelli knew centuries ago: being liked is a trap. It makes you predictable, it makes you soft. It puts your power in the hands of others. Because if your sense of value depends on other people's approval, then they own you. And once they know, you need them to like you. They stop respecting you. Machiavelli never told rulers to seek love. He told them to seek leverage, to make themselves important, to become necessary. Because when people fear losing your favor, they treat you differently. They watch what they say. They think twice before disrespecting you. They speak your name with caution, not because they're afraid you'll hurt them, but because they know your absence will. That's real power, not begging for attention, but becoming so valuable that your silence speaks louder than someone else's applause. You stop chasing admiration and start building gravity. When you don't need to be liked, you move differently. You say what you mean. You don't sugarcoat your words. You don't laugh at jokes that aren't funny just to fit in. You don't adjust your opinions to please the crowd. People may not always agree with you, but they'll feel your presence. And over time, they'll learn this. You're not someone who's easy to win, and that makes your attention worth winning. That's what Machiavelli understood so clearly, that the world is not won by being lovable. It's won by being valuable, and value comes from restraint, from scarcity, from the way you carry yourself like a prize, not a contestant. Think about how many times you've tried to win people over by being nicer, more available, more understanding, and what did it get you? Maybe some temporary praise, a few compliments, but not power, not respect. Because respect doesn't come from giving everything. It comes from not giving everything. It comes from making people earn your energy, your time, your trust. You become the kind of person people talk about when you leave the room. They say, he doesn't say much, but when he does, everyone listens. Or she's not easy to impress, but if she trusts you, you've done something right. That's what happens when you stop trying to be liked by all. You shift the social dynamic, you reverse the chase. Now they're wondering where they stand with you. They're trying to decode your tone. They're questioning if they said something wrong. And the more you master this posture, calm, controlled, slightly distant, the more influence you quietly gain. You don't need to be cruel. You don't need to be arrogant, but you do need to stop offering yourself freely to people who haven't earned it. Approval is cheap. Favor is currency. Machiavelli saw that clearly. A ruler who tries too hard to be loved will lose his crown to someone who understood how to be needed. Confidence is not something you're born with. It's not passed down like a family name or handed to you when you hit a milestone. Confidence is built slowly, deliberately by understanding how people work, and this is where most of the world gets it wrong. They try to become confident by standing in front of mirrors, repeating affirmations, watching motivational videos, and hoping the feeling will magically arrive. But Machiavelli would call that a distraction, because confidence that lasts doesn't come from hype. It comes from knowledge. It comes from understanding the nature of the game and the players in it. You see, Niccolò Machiavelli didn't write for dreamers. He wrote for rulers, for people who had to survive court intrigue, betrayal, manipulation, and war. People who couldn't afford to rely on self-help cliches. So he gave them something better, an unfiltered look into human nature. What makes people move, what makes them submit, what they admire, what they fear, what they can't resist. And if you understand these patterns, these unchanging patterns in human behavior, confidence is no longer something you fake. It becomes something you own. Think about it. How can you be afraid of others when you understand exactly how they think? How can you be intimidated when you can read their insecurities before they even speak? Most people walk through life blind, reacting to emotions, guessing intentions, afraid of what others think. But the Machiavellian mind doesn't guess. It observes, it studies, it learns how people are wired, and with that knowledge it moves with certainty. You want to become more confident. Don't start with yourself, start with them. Watch people. Listen to what they say and how they say it. Notice what makes them uncomfortable, what they avoid, what they envy, what they fear losing. Every time someone reveals an emotional weakness, you gain an advantage. And with every advantage, your confidence grows not from ego, but from insight. Because confidence built on emotion is fragile. It rises and falls based on how your day went, who complimented you, who ignored you, how many likes you got. That's not confidence, that's dependency. Machiavelli taught independence, emotional independence, strategic independence, the ability to remain composed even when others are cracking, the ability to see the storm and still choose your next move without panic. The key is to stop trying to impress and start trying to understand. You're not here to be louder than others. You're here to understand what makes them tick. And once you do, you won't need to raise your voice. You won't need approval, because while they chase applause, you'll be pulling strings. While they react, you'll anticipate. When you walk into a room with the knowledge of how people work, how they respond to power, to silence, to status, to scarcity, you no longer hope for confidence. You operate from it, not because you believe in yourself blindly, but because you know how the game is played. And more importantly, you know that most people have no idea they're even in a game. Now you see the truth. Confidence isn't some mystical trait you're born with. It's not about shouting louder, being liked by everyone, or faking positivity in the mirror. Confidence, the kind that's dangerous, the kind that makes people pause when you speak, is built through strategy, perception, restraint, and control. Machiavelli never promised comfort. He offered clarity. And what he showed us is this: if you want to rise in a world built on appearances and power plays, then you must think differently. You must act differently. You must become someone who doesn't beg for attention but commands it. Someone who understands that appearing certain is often more important than being right. Someone who makes others fear losing your presence more than they crave your approval. True confidence is not gifted to the loud, the agreeable, or the lucky. It's built by those who study the room, control their emotions, speak with intention, and walk like their silence is louder than other people's noise. This world doesn't reward the desperate. It rewards the deliberate. So stop waiting to feel confident. Start becoming confident, dangerously confident, by mastering yourself and mastering everyone around you.